All right, today we're cracking open the playbook for one of the most ambitious and, let's be honest, often violent projects in human history: how to build a state.
Okay, so picture this. The old world order has completely crumbled. A massive empire is just gone. And in its place, you've got chaos, but you've also got opportunity. So what do you do? How do you actually take all those broken pieces and forge them into a brand new kingdom that lasts?
For a long time, the answer to that question seemed pretty simple and pretty brutal. But as we're about to see, that simple story of just crowns and swords might be hiding a much more complex and, frankly, a way more interesting truth. So let's start with that classic theory.
So, first things first, how do you even make a state? Let's dive into the classic theory, the one that you'd find in all the old textbooks. This right here, this is the big one. The sociologist Charles Tilly boiled it all down to this one powerful idea. Basically, the constant, relentless pressure of war was like a furnace, and modern states were forged inside it. The need to fight, and more importantly, the need to win, ended up creating everything else.
And that thinking gives us our first model, the fiscal military state. And really, the name tells you everything you need to know. Its whole purpose is designed around two things: collecting money, that's the fiscal part, and then spending all that money on armies and weapons, the military part. It's a state built for one thing: survival in a dog-eat-dog world.
So if you're following this playbook, everything, and I mean everything, is about war. Government workers aren't there for public service. Their main job is to collect taxes to pay for the next battle. You only get more land through conquest. And wealth? Well, that's seen as a finite pie. The only way you're getting a bigger slice is by taking it from somebody else by force.
But what if that's not the whole picture? What if there's another playbook entirely?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. A few historians started digging into the numbers and realized, wait a minute, some of the most successful states are spending a ton of money on things that have nothing to do with armies. They were actually investing in their people and their economy.
And this gives us our second model, the developmental state. It's kind of the polar opposite. Instead of just taking wealth, it tries to create it. Its main tools aren't just armies, they're roads, bridges, legal systems, and support for new industries. The whole mindset is different. It's not about taking a bigger piece of the pie, it's about baking a much, much bigger pie for everyone.
For a real-world example, just look at 18th century Britain. After it united with Scotland, the government in London could have tried to control the Highlands with brute force, but they didn't. Instead, they spent over £152,000, which was a staggering amount of money back then, to peacefully buy out the old privileges of the clan chieftains. They chose to invest instead of invade. Now that's a developmental move.
And that was just the start. The British state just kept pouring money into the Scottish economy, everything from fishing to making linen. They built new infrastructure, which they called improving roads and bridges in North Britain. This wasn't about winning a war. This was about building a more prosperous, a more stable, and a more unified country.
Okay, so we've got two competing playbooks, the warrior and the builder. To see how these two ideas clash in the real world, we're going to jump in our time machine and go way back to a kingdom that was literally born from the ashes of the Roman Empire, the Visigothic Kingdom in Hispania.
So here's the quick and dirty history. They show up just as the Western Roman Empire is falling apart. They build a kingdom, and for more than 200 years, they rule over what we now call Spain and Portugal. They're dealing with rebellions from the inside, threats from the outside, and then, boom, in 711, their whole kingdom just vanishes almost overnight. So the big question is, which playbook were they using? So what's the deal with these guys? Were they a kingdom of warriors, defined by their fancy weapons and belt buckles? Or were they a kingdom of builders, defined by these incredibly ambitious, planned-out cities? The crazy thing is, when you look at the evidence, the answer seems to be, well, both. All right, let's make the case for Team Warrior State. The evidence is pretty strong. The whole kingdom was dominated by this military elite, and your right to be king totally depended on whether you could win in battle, period. Their history books are full of super detailed accounts of warfare, and their laws even made military service mandatory for anyone with power. On the surface, it looks like a textbook fiscal military state. But then, you look a little closer, and you start seeing all this other stuff. These same warrior kings are out there founding brand new, carefully planned cities from scratch. They're keeping the old Roman aqueducts working. They're minting coins to run their economy. They aren't just conquering, they're governing. This is stuff straight out of the developmental playbook. And get this,
power wasn't just in the hands of the soldiers. I mean, look at this thing. It's not a sword, it's a tombstone. And it tells us that Roman traditions, especially through the church, were still a huge deal. Bishops weren't just religious guys. They were powerful local administrators, they were judges. The church was like this whole parallel, non-military pillar holding up the state.
But maybe the single biggest piece of evidence for the builder state is this: the Liber Iudiciorum. This was one unified legal code for everyone in the kingdom, didn't matter if you were Goth or Roman. Just stop and think about how ambitious that is. This isn't about raising an army to win a battle. This is about building a single, unified society under the rule of law. That is a monumental act of state building.
Okay, so where does all this leave us? Was the Visigothic Kingdom a war machine, or was it a grand social project?
When you lay it all out side by side like this, you can really see the problem. For every piece of evidence that says they were a fiscal military state, there's a strong piece of evidence that says they were a developmental one. Their leadership was split between warrior kings and powerful bishops. They invested in siege engines, but they also invested in new cities. They tried to unify their kingdom with both force and law. It's a total contradiction.
So, the final verdict. It was never one or the other. The Visigothic state was this fascinating and, ultimately fragile hybrid. It was basically in a constant, messy negotiation between the warriors' need to fight and the builders' need to create. It just goes to show that in the real world, state-making isn't about picking one clean playbook. It's about trying to run plays from two different ones at the exact same time.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. This tension, this constant tug of war between the warrior state and the builder state, between investing in security and investing in prosperity, that wasn't just a problem for some long-lost kingdom. Is it possible that this is the fundamental, timeless challenge that every single state in every era, even today, is still trying to figure out?